Tony Yoka of France defeats Joyce of England in the men's super heavyweight Olympic final in boxing. A lot of people were very upset by the result of this fight, particularly English people. A lot of people were screaming robbery. They thought that Joyce clearly won the fight. What I will say is this. A lot of people who tune in to watch amateur boxing, and I've seen this many times over the years, particularly in the last couple of Olympics, many people who tune in to watch this Olympic boxing are not people who have watched a lot of amateur boxing before. And therefore they are not familiar with the scoring criteria in amateur boxing, because it is quite different than the scoring criteria in professional boxing. Amateur boxing judges tend to be real sticklers for technique. Generally speaking, in amateur boxing, body punches are very rarely scored. And there is a real emphasis on clean punching thrown with, as I say, what the judges deem to be correct technique. I've seen many instances where judges will not score, for example, a left hook, which is not delivered with the forearm parallel to the ground. That's how rigid the scoring criteria can often be in amateur boxing, particularly in these big competitions like the Olympics and World Championships, etc. So when I was watching this fight, Yoka against Joyce, I wasn't particularly upset with the decision. I thought the decision was a fair decision, to be honest with you. I don't know, gonna be a lot of people disliking the video now, but it is what it is. A lot of you just don't understand that amateur boxing is scored differently. And I'm not just talking about the point system, okay? Because I know they've switched over to the 10-point must system now, rather than the like the CompuBox system that they used to have. It was like CompuBox, where you've got a bunch of judges around the ring pushing buttons, and if they all push a button within a second or two of each other, at that point is scored. I know they've changed that. They've changed how they record the points, but the criteria hasn't changed. Okay, they're still sticklers for certain techniques and what have you. And it's all about who's landing the clean punches delivered with the knuckle part of the glove. And it don't matter if you throw a million shots and you got the guy up against the ropes. If he lands one or two clean shots, he's going to get those points and he's going to take those rounds. And that's what Tony Yoka did, I'm afraid, people. As much as people are upset and are being all patriotic and all this type of stuff, I'm just looking at it objectively. And from an objective point of view, knowing how amateur judges score fight, and you can say that they shouldn't score fights like that, or it's a stupid system. Fair enough, that's a fair argument, but the fact is, this is the system that there is in place. This is the criteria that there is in place, and knowing that they have this criteria in place, you shouldn't be surprised at all that Tony Yoka was awarded a decision. So that's how I was looking at it. I was looking at it with the knowledge that amateur judges score fights in this particular way, and you know, I thought that based on that criteria, the right man won. Tony Yoka won. Now, I've known of Joyce for quite a while now. I saw him in the World Boxing Series against Usyk, where he took quite a beating. I've seen him in several other fights. He fought Anthony Joshua in the amateurs, and he's been obviously training with Anthony Joshua. Joshua's been helping him prepare for the Olympics. And I've never been particularly impressed with Joyce. I always thought he was unbelievably stiff and robotic. I mean, people say that Joshua is stiff and robotic. Joshua looks like Pernell Whitaker compared to Joyce. That's how stiff and robotic Joyce is. Very stiff, robotic guy. Has a very novice-like technique. You know, the way he holds his hands and throws his punches, he looks like somebody who just learned to box last week. And I don't say that disrespectfully, I'm just being observant here. However, Joyce has actually been boxing, at least 10 years? Something like that. So as limited as he is, as slow and rigid as he is, I have to give props to Joe Joyce for the fact that he was actually able to make it to the Olympic final and do so legitimately. You know, this wasn't like Joshua in 2012 where there was a lot of controversy about him even winning his first round fight against Erislandy Savon. Most people felt that Joshua lost that fight. Whereas Joe Joyce got to the final legitimately. There was no gift decisions or anything like that. But with that being said, I feel like Joshua faced much higher quality opponents in the 2012 Olympics than Joe Joyce faced in this 2016 Olympics. Let that be said. I feel like Joshua's opposition, like Savon and Camarel, were way better than the guys that Joe Joyce fought. And the final, to be honest with you, again, not to be disrespectful, I'm just drawing on my experience here. This Olympic final was two of the definitely poorest super heavyweights I've seen in an Olympic final. Yoka didn't, this was actually the first time I'd seen Yoka fight. He didn't impress me. He didn't really seem to have much power in his punches. He was tough. Both guys were tough. That's what I can say. Joe Joyce is obviously a very strong man, physically strong, hits hard, but very, very rudimentary. And Yoka, more accurate, more clean punching. And again, he was the one landing the clean punching. Even though he was being systematically outworked throughout the fight, he was the one landing those few little clean shots. Nothing really heavy, but they were cleaner than what Joe Joyce was landing. But still, Yoka to me had that typical basic French boxing style that you see a lot of times these days. People like Christophe Rebras, for example, box in a very, very similar way to Tony Yoka. It's just not an eye-catching or crowd-pleasing style that Yoka has. But nonetheless, he wins the super heavyweight gold medal. And he will no doubt turn professional and be a very, very big star in the world of French sports. So that's going to be good for French boxing, and hopefully this will get more young kids in France involved in the sport of boxing. This is what tends to happen, particularly if a country hasn't had success in a particular sport for a long time and somebody comes along like a Tony Yoka and wins gold. There's going to be a lot of fanfare. There's going to be a lot of media coverage, and all of that is going to inspire other young kids to try and follow in his footsteps. So that will hopefully be a good thing, because boxing in France is really a marginalized niche sport, and they do have a couple of good fighters in France. You know, I do like Carlos Takam and Johan Duopa, for example. I like both those guys, but I don't think they could fill a phone box in France when they fight, unfortunately. And that's sad, because both of those guys are real tough men who give it 100%. And I think they deserve really to have some type of support in France. So maybe with Yoka's gold medal victory, you'll see more interest in the sport of boxing over there. So we'll see, people. Let me know how you feel in the comment section below, although I think I know how a lot of you are actually feeling. And I'm pretty sure a lot of you will be angry at me for saying that the decision was fair. It is what it is, but I have to say, looking at it objectively and dispassionately without any kind of bias or, you know, feverish patriotism, this is how amateur boxing is scored, people. You know, don't be shocked at these kind of things. You have to be landing clean punches. If you're in an amateur fight and you're throwing a million shots, hitting arms and gloves, but the other guy's landing a few little clean shots on your face, you're in trouble on the scorecards. That's what I can tell you. It is what it is. Anyway, people, it's your boy Hatman. I'm out.